copies of our flyer to their constituents, as well as the League of Women Voters. Tonight we have 6 of the 7 candidates who are running for Senate and Assembly in District 40. We have our moderator, Lucy Heller, who is from Park Ridge and is not in District 40. We have Joan Burns and Pam Perrin, our timekeepers. They are going to be holding up cards to indicate a stop at the end of your time, and also we're going to use a 30-second one. Okay. Lucy's going to go over the format soon, but I did want to tell you some of the floor rules, but most of you know this already, right? Audience questions and candidates' remarks must follow league policy of being concerned with issues, not personalities. The moderator will not allow abusive, personalized, or irrelevant questions or remarks. So that we can move along in the time allotted and hear equally from each candidate, we ask that you hold your applause until the end of the forum. We have a young gentleman who's handing out cards. If you would like to write a question, if you don't have a card already, hold up your hand and he'll come over. Oh, and a young lady too. Okay. Tag team. And when you're finished, if you would hand it back to them or raise your hand and they'll come pick it up from you, it will be given to a committee of league members who will review them. Please, one of the hardest things to do as a moderator is to read scroll. Please try to maybe even print, make it legible. Otherwise, we wind up guessing or saying, I can't read this question at all. We can't ask it. Let's see. The question should address only those issues that come before the legislative body in Trenton. And we will try to avoid redundancy and ensure a wide range of topics. Please, if you would, turn off your electronic instruments so that they're not interrupting. I understand that the proceedings will be taped by the Ridgewood TV. I'm not sure the name of it exactly, but it will appear on the Ridgewood channel. You can find it probably on Facebook, I think it is. If you type in the correct thing, you know, yeah, on YouTube, sorry. And it will be available for you to review again, or you could tell your friends about it if they missed the evening here. As I say, Lucy is going to tell about the timing of the format, and please hold your applause, even though if the answer is a very good answer, hold the applause until the end. We do have some materials outside on the table. There are 2 public questions on the ballot for everyone to vote on, so there are copies out there. And we have the freeholder forum will be on Thursday at the Bergen County Technical High School in Teterboro. If you're interested, come on down. And now we have Ms. Heller.
Thank you, Barbara. Audience, please excuse my back. I'm dealing with these people, and you want to hear from them and not me. So, now our format will be each candidate, and they have drawn to determine the order of their opening statements. They have half a minute for an opening statement. Then I have a couple of questions which were prepared by the League of Women Voters, which they will all address, and they will have 1.5 minutes to address those, each individual. members of the same party want to reinforce each other and let one talk longer and, you know, the others take less, that's fine also. We just want to have information that's understandable presented for the audience. And some of the questions, if they're really short, I might make the time less, but generally it's 1.5 minutes to answer. And then after we close the questions, shortly after 9, they will each have an opportunity for a closing statement, and their closing statements can be 2 minutes each. And I suggest that you keep in mind, if there's any question that you're not able to address sufficiently in the time allowed, make a note, and you can mention that in your closing remarks, okay? So let's get underway. Timekeeper's all set. And let's see, Mr. DePhillips
Yes.
is our first speaker for his opening remarks.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you to the League for having us tonight. My name is Chris DePhillips. I'm a husband, a father of 4 children, an attorney for the last 25 years, a former mayor, and I'm running for Assembly in District 40. I'm running to reduce state spending, to cut property taxes, to reduce overregulation on business, to fix the school funding formula, and to stop courts from imposing unworkable, affordable housing mandates on local communities in our district. My vision for New Jersey is very different than our opponents. I look forward to our discussion tonight. Thank you very much.
And the second speaker is Christine Ordway.
I'm Christine Ordway. Thanks to the League and all of you for attending. I am a daughter of a blue-collar printer. I am a granddaughter of a Polish immigrant. My mother was a secretary, but had to stay home when my only sibling was born with Down syndrome. I have my whole life defended people like my sister. I am not an attorney, though. I have a BS in accounting from Fairfield. I have an MBA in finance from Pace, and I also have my CPA.
Thank you. And our third opening statement will be from Mr. Rooney.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the League and everyone who is here to attend tonight. I'm a married father of 4, grandfather of 2. I served as Wyckoff mayor for 3 terms. Currently, I'm down in the Assembly. I've been there since December of 2016. It's been my honor to serve since then. I've been fighting for you in District 40, as well as the 9 million residents of the state of New Jersey. I will continue to fight with my 2 running mates. Thank you.
Our fourth speaker is Mr. Bagianos.
Cartoons and rocket ships. That's what we have that our opponents have sent to the voters of this district. There are tremendous issues facing the state of New Jersey, but they send out cartoons and rocket ships. Our issues are a staggering debt, unpaid pension obligations, an impossible commute to New York City, the highest property taxes in the country, the 4th highest college tuition, the 7th highest cost of living, and a bond rating that's been downgraded 11 times, and we get cartoons and rocket ships.
Okay, and speaker number 5 is Kristen Corrado.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the League for having this forum tonight. I am a wife, a stepmom to 3 wonderful children, a grandmother to 2. I'm a small business owner. I've been an attorney for 26 years. I was the Passaic County Clerk for the last 8. I'm running because I want to stay in New Jersey. I love this state, and I want to stay here for the rest of my life. Thank you.
And finally, Mr. Dutch.
Thank you very much. My name is Tom Dutch. I'm a candidate for State Senate in District 40. I began my career when I was elected as mayor in the city of Garfield in 1980. I served 2 terms, 8 years. I served 2 terms in the General Assembly. While in the Assembly, I worked on the Environmental Quality Committee, chaired the Conservation and Natural Resources Committee, served on the Independent Authorities Committee, and also on a special bipartisan committee to address fraternity and sorority hazing. I have vast government experience. I've served the last 14 years as city manager in the city of Garfield. I hope to take that vast daily government experience and bring it to a higher level and serve as state senate representing all the people in this district.
Thank you. At this point, I think it's worth noting that this particular legislative district has towns in Bergen, Essex, Morris, and Passaic counties. So it's an unusual legislative district, certainly. Okay, now we're going to go into questions, and I'm going to go in the reverse order to answer the first question. So Mr. Dutch will speak first, and the question is, what measures would you support to increase voter participation in elections in New Jersey?
In terms of voter participation, I believe that we have to, vote by mail has to be encouraged. There are a lot of people out there who can't vote because of their work obligations or because of disabilities or home obligations. So that has to be made as available as possible. I believe that we should also, I had a friend who for many years worked in a high school, and the high school every year, before you left as a senior, everybody who was 18 was registered to vote. We need to introduce those types of voter awareness programs to high schools and to colleges and to get our young people engaged.
And so, Rada.
As a county clerk, one of my responsibilities was to be an election official, and we oversaw the vote-by-mail program. I happened to oversee it in Passaic County. And one of the things that I did to make it easier was to make sure my office was open. 45 days before the start of any election, you could walk into our office, fill out the application, get your ballot, drop your ballot off, and your vote was in. We also opened night hours and weekends to make it easier. On top of that, I opened up a satellite office up county so that it made it easier for voters who lived in a different portion of the county to vote. I did that as county clerk, and I'm proud of that. Thank you.
And the next person to answer will be Ms. Ordway.
Okay. Many senior housing facilities do have voter machines that are brought in for their seniors, so that has to continue. I also believe that when you get your license, you should be registered to vote. And that doesn't mean that you have to vote or someone's forcing you to vote, but it is, you will be registered. I also believe that we need to teach the importance of voting in the schools. In 2015, in the election, the voting was 19% turnout, which was a 90-year low.
Mr. Rooney.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to say that my running mate, Kristen, has done an amazing job increasing voter awareness in the county of Passaic. Not only would I strive to continue that process, but also to increase awareness on the internet. Education to our young is very important, and make them aware of the need to get out and vote and express their rights. Thank you.
And Mr. Baggiano.
Yeah, you know, what everybody said is absolutely correct, and I believe that Chris Ordway brings out the best point of all. When we need to take down the roadblocks that exist for people who are voting. And the first one is voter registration. We can immediately have virtually everyone registered to vote simply by having them registered when they get their driver's license. It's a great identifier. We know exactly who they are. Why do we make them have to jump through extra hoops? Even vote by mail. You have to send out an application and then get it back and then send it back in. Right now, it is as difficult as possible to vote. We need to take down every one of these roadblocks. And as Kevin said, we need to make awareness better. And as Chris said, starting in the schools. This is a responsibility that we need to teach.
That everyone has answered that
Not
question.
me.
I'm sorry. Mr.
So I'll back clean up on this, and I think both sides generally agree on this. This is not a Republican-Democrat issue. This is about raising awareness, education, using technology, using the internet to get the word out about voting obligations. We want more people to vote. Both sides, both parties want more people to vote, and we have to work through young people, our kids, our grandkids, to make sure that they get to the polls and vote.
Great, okay. Everyone's answered?
Everyone.
Okay. We'll move to the next question, and again, a minute and a half. And this time, we're going to start with the assembly candidates rather than the mayoral candidates. And we'll start with Mr. DePhillips.
Sure.
And this question is, what legislation would you propose to fulfill the court's mandate for affordable housing.
Okay, so I have a fairly strong view on this. Going back to the Mount Laurel Supreme Court decision back in 1985, I don't think courts should be making affordable housing decisions. I think we should do whatever we can to take the judiciary out of decisions that are best left to local communities and local towns. I'm very concerned about over legislation at the judicial level. I don't think courts should come down and tell Allendale and Ridgewood and Wyckoff and the other towns in our district what they must do in terms of affordable housing. Beyond that, I think both sides want to see fair and affordable housing for all residents. But more and more you see affordable housing mandates that are pure and simple unaffordable for people, certainly in our area. So I don't think the courts are the place to address it. I think it's in council chambers just like this.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Ordway.
There was an article in the Suburban News, which many of you get, and it's titled, "Bergen County Towns Can Build Affordable Housing." There are 14 towns so far in Bergen that have adopted affordable housing rules. I live in Franklin Lakes, and we are putting second floors on retail buildings, and those are affordable housing units. I do not believe we should bring back CRAs, and for those of you who don't know what those are, that allows a town like Franklin Lakes to sell its obligation to a town like Garfield. I don't believe we should be doing that. I think we need to have a balanced community in each of these towns. There are 145 towns across the state of New Jersey that have these affordable housing rulings, and they have proven to work.
Mr. Rooney.
I do have a strong opinion similar to Mr. DePhillips with respect to affordable housing, specifically coming as a mayor. Right here in Ridgewood, your fair share housing numbers are 900 units. That means a builder would seek to approximately build 3,600 units in this particular town, which again means more police, more emergency services, more DPW, more schools, more strain on your local resources, more. We need to build affordable units where jobs are, where transit is, not here in our communities where we don't have that ability. We should control it locally, the mayor should have an input in it, and we should take it out of the courts and put it back in the legislature and into the local municipalities.
And Mr. Vaggiano.
Mr. Rooney is absolutely right. Most towns in this area are already fully developed. So there's very little available land. The problem is that this is not an issue for the state legislature at this moment, because with the balance of power, the state Supreme Court determines what is constitutional. So unless and until we change the state constitution, the state Supreme Court's ruling governs, and there's absolutely nothing that the state legislature can do to change that.
This finishes our assembly candidates, and now our mayoral candidates will address this question.
Senate.
I'm sorry, Senate question. Senate candidates.
I agree with much of what's been said already. The Mount Laurel case was actually a zoning discrimination case, and it turned into a government-funded program for affordable housing. Most of you know the communities you live in are built maximum. There isn't room. Their housing advocates are calling for 288,000 units. With 20% as set aside, that's 1.4 million units throughout the state of New Jersey. It's really the best ones to do this, to make the determination, are at the local level. I know in my hometown of Totowa, we've had a couple new developments been in. We've worked with the developers, and 20% of the new developments will have low and moderate income housing as part of it, and that's the way to do it.
Now, Mr. Dutch.
Thank you. Affordable housing is something that sometimes is looked at as something that is inherently evil. It is absolutely not. In the city of Garfield, we have 467 units of affordable housing. The other thing that we have is, Christine mentioned it briefly, years ago they had a program in the state legislature where affordable housing, Franklin Lakes didn't want it, the city of Garfield did. The city of Garfield, where I serve as the manager, we took over $1 million from Franklin Lakes. We gave it out in $25,000 increments. We were able to allow people to take this money and to remain in our city so that you become a receiving community. So it is something that has worked, and it's something that I think bears looking at again. One of the things we're trying to do in Garfield also is, with redevelopment, we're looking at redeveloping and keeping our seniors, let them age in place. So how can they age in place? We have to find programs for them to age in their homes, or we have to find programs for them where they can participate and become beneficiaries of this affordable housing program. So I think that it can work. The legislature needs to step up to the plate, and I'd like to be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, well, that one, we already talked about increasing voter participation. All right. This time, we're going to go with Assembly again, but the one who answered second will go first this time. Okay, I think we started on this side, so we'll start this question on this side with Mr. Vagianos.
Sure.
And the question from the audience says, are you for extending the 2% arbitration cap for police and firemen?
No. The arbitration cap is exactly what it says. It's arbitrary. So first of all, it means that if you have low inflationary times, like we're in now, where inflation is less than 1%, automatically you're going to be up at 2%. Automatically. It just works out that way. It is not a fair or reasonable way of dealing with our property taxes. By the same token, if you're in high inflationary times, what are you going to do? I remember times when inflation was at 18%. We cannot live on a 2% cap. It is exactly what it says. It is arbitrary.
Mr. Rooney.
Thank you. First, I just want to point out something back to COA quickly. One of the things I said was the impact on schools. In all of Bergen County, $213 million comes into our county for all 70 towns. Garfield alone receives $56 million, or 1/4. So that's some of the problems with COA. I absolutely support the 2% interest arbitration cap, and in fact, I took a position in the Assembly on that. As a mayor, it's one of the tools that we need when we're working on your municipal budgets to keep your taxes low. I will tell you, you don't have to just go to 2%. If you have the resources, mayors have the ability to go above that, but we need a tool in our toolbox, and this is this one that helps us as mayors.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Ordway.
I would say that the 2% cap should not be in place, primarily because Governor Christie has not funded the pensions to the tune of several $billions. So these folks, if they're getting a 2% raise and they're not being able to count on their pensions, that they're not going to have enough money to live and to stay in our communities.
Mr. Phillips.
So I'm going to disagree with Christine on her criticism of Governor Christie on this issue. The Christie administration has funded the pension obligations more than certainly prior governors and prior administrations. The problem is the other side just wants to see full funding overnight, and we don't have the resources, and unless they want to raise taxes by $9 billion, which apparently the Murphy-Oliver ticket wants to do, we can't fund these obligations completely, fully, overnight without massive tax increases. I also disagree with what Paul said. The 2% cap is something we can live with, and we have lived with at the municipal level over the last 7 years. There's a little confusion on this issue of interest arbitration. Whether you agree with extending the interest arbitration cap or not, you still have to live within the 2% cap. That's not going away whether or not the interest arbitration goes away.
Thank you. And now we'll go to our Senate candidates. Mr. Dutch.
Thank you very much. In terms of the cap, as somebody who runs a city day to day, I support the 2% cap. All right, but I support the 2% cap in connection with or simultaneously with full funding of our pension obligation. I know that it can't be done overnight. I know that the budget is a mess. I know that the finances of the state are a mess. The 2% cap allows us to run a government effectively and not raise taxes constantly, despite what you might read in some political literature. but it works in terms of cities. It doesn't necessarily work with school boards. It does work with cities. I believe that we have an obligation to fully fund pensions. Mr. DePhillips is correct. It can't be done overnight. It needs to be done over a period of time with sound fiscal planning throughout the state at every level.
So there's two caps that we're talking about. There's the interest and arbitration cap and the 2% cap that's been imposed throughout the state. I support discussing it with your municipality. I was a municipal attorney for many years, and we negotiated our police contracts. We never went to arbitration because we always gave them a fair contract. And I think there's something to be said for going back to that. I also understand about the need to keep taxes down, and it has worked over. But I think this is something that's not going to be decided anytime soon. When you talk about the police and fire pension, it's 85% funded. So it's something we're all going to have to discuss, but it certainly does seem to be working to some extent.
Okay. This time, let's start with our mayoral candidates and it. Sorry, Senate candidates. I can't get away from municipality. And this time we'll start with Mr. Dutch. And this question is, New Jersey's bond rating has been downgraded multiple times in the last 8 years, and this increases state costs, especially interest on borrowing. What experience in your public life do you have that prepares you to deal with this situation, or what are your ideas to address the issue of bond rating?
Thank you, Lucy. My experience in public life is this. I serve as the city manager in Garfield. We have 33,000 people who live in that city and 2.1 square miles. When I became the city manager 14 years ago, the city was broke. Our bond rating was terrible. It took me about 6 years. We turned the city around. Last year, we generated the biggest surplus in the history of the city. We have the best bond rating we have ever had. So how does that apply statewide? Well, we can take that small example and we can apply it statewide. It takes some leadership. It takes somebody who's going to stand up in the Senate and say, this is what we need to do. We need to get control of our finances. Will it be overnight? It will not. Anyone who says to you it can happen overnight, it cannot. In that example, in a small city that is a poor city, it took us 6 years to do it, but we turned our house around. We were able to redevelop acres and acres and acres of property in that city. That money has generated an economic engine which has helped us with our bonds, and we have done refinancing now where we have refinanced city debt, and where we were paying 3.5% and 4%, we're paying 1.7, 1.6, so it can be done, and I have the experience to do it.
So Mr. Dutch and I agree a little bit on this, that it starts at the local level. I happen to come from a town, Totowa, where I have a CPA mayor. My town has no debt, and we haven't had for many years. We haven't bonded in a long time. If we need new equipment, if there's a purchase that we want to make, such as a fire truck, which is very expensive, we have a plan in advance. We save the money up. 3 to 5 years later, down the road, we're able to buy. And I think the state should take a look at what your mayors and councils do so well day in, day out. As the municipal attorney, I negotiated the contracts in the town. I was responsible for that. As the Passaic County clerk, I was the second largest generator of revenue. Over 8 years, I gave $13 million back to Passaic County in unanticipated revenue. And I did that because I made our services easier. We all work during the day, so we had night and weekend hours to make our services more available. Same thing, we put things online. I do agree with Mr. Dutch, start at the local level. All things are local, and they do a great job at the local level.
Okay, now to our assembly candidates. Mr. Vagianos first.
Sure. You know, Tom's right. This is not something that can be resolved in just a few years, and anybody who tells you that is not being honest with you. This is going to take 10 to 15 years. I've been in small business for over 20 years here in Ridgewood, and for those of you who are familiar with the town, I'm in the restaurant business. And for those of you who are familiar with the restaurant business, you know that lasting over 20 years is an eternity. And I don't have to balance my budget annually. I have to balance it every week. And the problem here, as Kristen points out, is debt. We don't want to pay our pension obligations. or at least the current legislature doesn't and the current governor doesn't. We don't have any choice. That's why they call it an obligation. Until we balance our books, our bond rating is going to continue to fall. As I mentioned earlier, it's fallen 11 times in 10 years. It's all a question of debt to equity. We have way too much debt, and we have to get out of that debt, and we have to do it slowly. It's like a big ship. You can't turn it quickly. You can turn it slowly, but we have to get it started in the right direction.
And Mr. Rooney.
Thank you. As I said before, I was a mayor in a neighboring town of Wyckoff, where I ran the municipal budget. I was the finance chair there for 6 years. We had little to no debt in our municipality compared to neighboring towns. Additionally, you're right about it being a big ship. With respect to the 2018 budget, which I voted for as one of 6 Republicans, we included the largest contribution to the state pension in history, $2.5 billion. We also dedicated the lottery over the next 30 years, which will generate $37 billion in funding, and immediately reduced the long-term obligations by $13.5 million, which will change that downgrade. Thank you.
And Ms. Ordway.
First of all, Kim Guadagno's whole game plan is to give all of you an average of a $3,000 tax decrease right off the bat. As everyone has said, we are in a fiscal nightmare that we can't wake up from. Our bonds have been downgraded 11 times, which means that the cost of money is much higher. Our governor has given away $23 million to expand the athletic facility of Rutgers, when Rutgers raised $200 million this year, which is a historic high for them. So we should not have done that. Christie also took a $250 million settlement from Exxon when it was in the courts for $8.9 billion. He took that settlement so he could use half of it to plug his budget. So until we have a new governor and a new legislature that, like myself, I'm going to be one of the few CPAs and MBAs. There are a lot of attorneys. We need some financial background to comb through the budget and find out where all the money is.
And Mr. Phillips.
Thank you. Is anyone surprised that our bond rating has been downgraded as many times as it has? Because New Jersey is viewed as business unfriendly, an unaffordable place to live. We campaign constantly. We talk to people in our district, and they are concerned about whether they can stay in the state, whether they have to put the for sale sign up. So Christine talks about taxes and what the Christie administration did. Let's look at what's being proposed on the other side during this gubernatorial race. Phil Murphy, Sheila Oliver proposing minimally $9 billion in new taxes on a state budget that is $34 billion already. $9 billion in new taxes. So, that's just one area, that's education. If you actually look at the plan and the gubernatorial and lieutenant gubernatorial candidates they're supporting, we're looking at upwards of $75 billion in new taxes that they would have to raise to get their agenda enacted. So if you want to see the bond rating get downgraded once again, vote for the other side. Thank you.
That gets all our assembly candidates. And now we're ready for the senators, right? Got it right this time. Mr. Dodge.
We started.
We
started. Mr.
I'm
Dodge
sorry.
He answered first.
I'm waiting for another question.
Right, okay.
Give him a hard
Here you
one.
are. You started, so you start, right? Correct?
He started. Mr. Dutch answered the first question
Okay.
last time.
So,
I guess it's my
Senate
turn.
on this side
Okay.
first. Okay. What is your plan to make college tuition more affordable?
It is expensive to go to college in New Jersey. When I went to college many years ago, I was able to work my way through. And unfortunately, I don't think you can say the same. We graduated in 4 years, and the way the college is structured, it's really difficult. I think one of the things we have to do is make New Jersey more affordable in general. Unfortunately, we're losing a number of our college students to out-of-state colleges that offer better deals. And when that happens, they stay there. The best way to improve the tuition in the state of New Jersey is to make New Jersey more affordable, more business. Do partnerships with businesses, internships where a portion of their college tuition would be covered if they happen to go into that particular industry. One thing, and it's a great thing, and I had stepchildren that did it, and I'm very happy they chose to do it. They started at our community colleges, which are wonderful. They got their 60 credits, we were able to afford it, and then they were able to finish their last 2 years at a state university. We have one at Montclair State and one at William Patterson, and that's one way that New Jersey is affordable.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Dyke.
Okay, at this time, it would be great to say that we absolutely can help education. We're going to have to help education as we help the entire state budgetary process. In order for us to do what we need to do here in the state of New Jersey, we need to take a very hard look at our budget. We need to cut our budget. We need to consolidate services wherever we can. That's municipal services, school services. There are multiple levels of government, multiple levels of administrative personnel that are really not necessary. You have 565 units of municipal government. You have 600 or so school districts throughout the state. If we had some consolidation, we would be able to have some funds. If we had some funds and we were able to be a more business-friendly state, we could build our economy. If we build our economy, we start to lower our interest rates. We start to enhance our bond rating. And that would free up funds that would allow us to do things that are talked about, like free community college, and to subsidize students who are in student loan programs. Right now, student loan programs are about 6.8%. If we could turn the bond rating of the state around and we had more money available, we would be able to help our students to borrow at a cheaper rate and hopefully, down the line, bring in free community college. Thank you.
Okay, and now, Mr. Phillips.
Okay, thank you. This is a real issue facing families throughout District 40, obviously throughout the entire state. You know, there's a real problem with not just education, but healthcare. I mean, healthcare costs are going up nationally about 14%. Education costs for college and other levels of education going up about 13% a year, and that's well in excess of inflation. So that's a real problem for families. I myself have a sophomore at college in Massachusetts, and I mean, just from the freshman year to the sophomore year, the tuition increase was staggering. So it's a real issue. I agree with Kristen. The way to deal with it is to make the state generally more affordable, and that's what we're standing for. We're standing for less state spending, reducing property taxes, reducing overregulation on businesses that are strangling businesses in the state, and they can't invest and they can't grow, and that can't put more money in families' pockets. Our opponents, Mr. Vagianos and Ms. Ordway, are on record in favor of free, 2-year college tuition. Sounds great, sounds enticing. How are you going to pay for it? I mean, where's the money going to come from? It's going to come from increased taxes.
Ms. Ordway.
As far as free community college, that may happen down the road, but we have to get New Jersey's fiscal house in order. I believe that we need to regionalize the 565 municipalities. We need to incentivize municipalities that are sharing services. We actually have one police person for every 220 people in New Jersey. That's pretty incredible when you think about it. I think that we also need to make students aware that there are many scholarships that students don't even apply for. I was a PTSO president for 3 years of Indian Hills High School, and it was amazing to me how many of the scholarships would be offered and no one would apply for them. And these were, $10,000, $15,000 scholarships, which would put a big dent in tuition. I also am a believer that for those kids that can't afford to, that community college, Bergen Community is a wonderful school, and to go there for 2 years and then be able to spend their last 2 years at a 4-year college, I think is wonderful.
Mr. Rooney.
Thank you. I do agree both with my colleagues and a little bit from the other side. first and foremost, we need to make this state affordable. We can't afford a $75 billion in additional taxes. We can't afford Phil Murphy. We can't afford Sheila Oliver. We certainly can't afford the proposal for tolls on 287 and Route 80. What that's going to do is drive up education because the teachers are going to need to be paid more in order to come to work. So if we're serious about reducing obligations for young people going to college, we need to get our state in order. We need to cut the taxes and not propose $75 billion in new taxes. That's my position.
Thank you,
One
Lucy.
more.
You know, I'm going to address that in my closing. I have to take a moment. Chris and Kevin, you know, you throw around these numbers, $9 billion a year, $75 billion. Chris, I told you in the last debate, you can't just make stuff up.
We don't.
You know,
we get it from the mouths
Excuse
of
me.
your governor.
Please.
excuse me.
Please, no exchanges.
Well, he started, so we're going to go back and forth.
And so let's talk about facts.
Here we go.
Let's talk about
answer.
your record in the legislature, Kevin.
Sure, go ahead.
You've been in there for about a year. Excuse me, I don't speak when he's speaking, please. You've been there for about a year, and this is what we've got to show for it. You voted against the Wage Transparency Act. You voted against funding for women's health care and family planning. You voted against the Family Leave Act. You voted against the seizure of firearms where a mental health professional determines that a patient is a threat to himself and others. You voted against limiting sales on realistic toy guns to keep children safe from tragic accidents with police. The list goes on and on and on. And I assume that Kristen and Chris also oppose these measures. You did everything possible to support the legacy of Governor Christie. And in that time, you had a total of one bill signed into law designating the month of May as Mental Health Awareness Month, which was actually a bill written and sponsored by Senator Dick Cody.
Can I respond?
Thank you, sir. Candidates have their time. They answer.
Any way we
they
want,
think.
that's fine.
Uh,
I will respond when it's my time.
Okay, I think we completed that round of questions. Okay, let's go to another subject, and this time let's begin with Ms. Ordway and then Mr. DePhillips, and then go to the Senate candidates. What is your position on funding for women's health that has been vetoed for the last several years? Funding for women's health.
Governor Christie, in his 8-year tenure, has vetoed Planned Parenthood funding every single year. I believe it needs to be funded. There are women that can't afford preventative health care who work 2, 3, 4 jobs just to make ends meet. So if you take that away from them, you have to look at the long term. If they're not getting preventative health care, they're going to the emergency room, they're not paying that bill. The taxpayer then pays that bill. Their child can't go to school because the mom can't work. So that child doesn't get the education that they need to be a responsible adult. So you really need to look at the long term of not funding preventative health care.
Mr. DePhillips.
I agree with Christine that we need to look at preventative health care funding for women. The issue, as she knows, is not preventative health care funding, it's what our various positions on abortion are, and those are certainly personal issues, and they are issues that we all consult our spiritual counselors on, and it's not the issue at hand. The issue at hand is finding available monies in the state budget for preventative health care for women, and I support that. I'm going to go back with my remaining time to what Paul had said about what I had said about $9 billion in increases for education funding. The facts are the facts. I was at the Lieutenant Governor's debate, and Sheila Oliver, much to my shock and dismay, 5 feet right in front of me on the stage, said that the Murphy and Oliver ticket absolutely supports $9 billion in new taxes and new spending just for education. We all want to fully fund education. Where are you going to find the money? You can't print money. That's the problem. So the facts are the facts, and I understand Paul doesn't want to hear the facts, but that's my response to what he had said. The words came right out of Lieutenant Governor candidate Sheila Oliver's mouth. Thank you.
Mr. Vagiano. And we were talking about women's health.
We're going to talk about women's health. All right. My daughter Lana is here. Lana, what do you think? Should I support this? What do you think? This ticket was endorsed by Planned Parenthood. And it's a pretty simple answer. Doesn't need a lot of involved stuff. We fully support fully funding Planned Parenthood in the state of New Jersey.
I guess you had half a minute left. So. Okay,
you
we're
can give it
back
to
Mr. Rooney.
Thank you. Well, let's talk about facts. Phil Murphy, New Jersey Spotlight, 5/17/2017, advocates single-payer health plan. Star Ledger, 5/22, same. Philadelphia Inquirer, 6/26/17. Single-payer health plan would cost upwards of $68.5 billion. To address your comments before, Paul, each and every bill, I vote from my heart, and I vote with the best interests of all the residents in New Jersey, and I avoid tax increases, unlike the democratically controlled legislature for the past 17 years. So to answer your question, Assembly approves Rooney's resolution to investigate corporations responsible for polluting Passaic River. 62 bipartisan lawmakers join myself and Vice President Pence to get Argentina to pay for a $1.3 billion Passaic cleanup. Rooney introduces Easy Pass bills to protect New Jersey drivers. Rooney seeks to strengthen the laws to protect consumers from telemarketing fraud. Rooney's bill helps veterans seeking civil service employment. Governor signs Rooney's mental health awareness resolution. Now, Dancer and Rooney's bill protecting grant eligibility for families struggling to pay college clears the Assembly. Rooney-Dancer bill advances through the legislature. And they go on and on, Paul. In my short, less than a year time there, I think I've accomplished very much. In fact, over 100 bills either I co-sponsored or sponsored. So get your facts straight.
Now our senatorial candidates address women's health.
Thank you very much. As we have been going and doing meet and greets and meeting people door to door, I have found a significant amount of women who have been very concerned about the Planned Parenthood, supporting Planned Parenthood. I had a great number of women who told me that while they were in college, Planned Parenthood was the only place that they were able to go to look for assistance, guidance, and health care while they were away at school. So, in terms of Planned Parenthood, we support full funding of Planned Parenthood and women's health care, preventative health care in particular. In terms of the budget, I will tell you here and now, I will never, ever support $9 million in tax increases.
Billion.
I am a very conservative guy. I watch the budget in my city. I work in a city that is extremely poor. About 18% of the people in the city of Garfield live at the poverty level or below. So I have to watch what I do every day so that I can deliver for those people so they can continue to live in that city. I am for cuts, consolidation, and proper management across the board.
I'm going to go back to the question that was originally asked about women's health care, and obviously as a female, it's extremely important to me. However, Planned Parenthood is not the only organization out there that offers health care for women. There's a number of groups that do. There's a number of federally qualified health care centers that treat more women on an annual basis in the state of New Jersey than Planned Parenthood does. There's a number of private and public partnerships at hospitals throughout the state that offer all kinds of things, whether it's breast exams or screening, reproductive screening, contraception counseling. It exists already. It's out there, and it's being done throughout the state of New Jersey.
Okay. We've covered everybody on women's health funding. Okay. We'll let the Senate candidates start again this time, and it will be Ms. Corrados first. And we had a question on how would you promote business growth in our state?
New Jersey has to be one of the unfriendliest business climates in the country. I believe it was actually rated worst by several different groups. We have high corporate taxes, we have high income tax, we have sales tax, we have any kind of tax, you name it. We're not business friendly. We absolutely need to turn that around. We have so much that this state offers, not the least of which is our access to transit throughout the state, waterways, trains. We're right next to New York City. We have so much, and the only way to do that is to go back, promote our state, offer the incentives to bring people here, and also keep people that will live here. Don't tax them out of the state so that they can't stay here. We all are fighting to make New Jersey more affordable. I'm in that boat right now. My husband's getting ready to retire. That's why it's so personal to me. We're doing everything we can, and as a small business owner, I own my own law firm. I know how difficult it is. We need to streamline regulations and make New Jersey affordable and friendly again. Dutch.
Thank you very much. This all goes back again to control of the state budget, control of state finances. It all goes back to how do we get it under control? How do we get the message out there that the state of New Jersey is ready, that we welcome business, that we want to attract and keep our workers, that we want to get our economy growing? How do we become an economic engine? We become an economic engine if we face the hard realities of the budget and if we cut, consolidate, and manage it properly. That's how it has to be done.
Mr. DePhillips would be next.
Sure. It's a great question, and best answered by talking to business owners in our state, like we're doing constantly during our campaign. And you should talk to the ones that have decided to leave the state. As Kristen said, the state is very business unfriendly, and the way to keep them here and continue to invest here is to reduce state spending, cut property taxes, like I said before, not have massive tax increases, cut needless regulations that are choking business that want to expand in this state. And how about scuttling some government programs that don't work? We can audit programs, we should audit programs, and the ones that aren't working, we should get rid of and try to save some money to entice these business owners to stay here in New Jersey. Bottom line is government needs to live within its means, just like everyone in this room does in their family lives. You know, the government should follow the lead of people in this room and try to be a little bit smart with their dollars. Thank you.
And on this side, we're...
Did you go in yet? I didn't go
I think
yet.
it's your turn, right.
There are other things we can do. I agree with what's been said so far, but our infrastructure is crumbling. We have 200 bridges and roads that are in major disrepair and are becoming dangerous. So we need to improve our infrastructure. We need to build the tunnel that Christie canceled a few years ago and lost all the federal funding along with it. Recently, there was talk about us getting $900 million towards building that tunnel, but apparently there were some people on the other side saying, well, why does New Jersey get that money? Why aren't we getting that money? So that's even in question. We need to revitalize our downtowns. I think the plan for Ridgewood, for example, to put the parking garage in the back of town where it's not going to be an eyesore, and to have high-density housing is actually a great way to bring business back.
Mr. Broome.
Sure. What I don't hear is an avoidance of not increasing taxes. That's what we need to do to keep businesses in the state of New Jersey. You know, we're ranked with the worst top 4 tax counties in the country. Bergen County is number 3, Essex County is number 4, Passaic County is number 6, and Morris County is number 8. Those are 4 counties in which we represent, and that's not a good accolade for us. Many small businesses are formed as LLCs or S corporations. They don't pay corporate taxes, but they pay them personally. We can't afford to continue to increase taxes on those type of businesses. Those are the small businesses. Those are the businesses that help us thrive each and every day. That's how we need to keep businesses here in New Jersey, by the avoidance of constantly increasing taxes. As I said, the legislature has been controlled by the Democratic Party for over the past 17 years. It's very difficult to effectuate change when a one party is controlling the legislature.
Thank you. And Mr. Vagianos.
Yeah, as I've said before, I've been in business here for over 20 years. I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I think the general feeling is, and it's true, government needs to get out of the way of business to let business do what it does best. And I'll give you an example. Right here in Ridgewood, years ago, there was a building department that just to get a certificate of occupancy to open your business took between 6 months and a year. How can anybody try and open a business, a small business, and pay rent for that time for 6 months or a year? Under the leadership of Mayor Paul Aronson, who was standing right in the back of this room, they revamped that building department, and now it takes a fraction of that time to open a small business here in town. The other thing that we need to do is we need to build that Hudson River rail tunnel. Anybody ever notice yet that New Jersey is a corridor state? It's a corridor state, but you can't get to New York. It takes 2 hours to get there from here. We need to build that Hudson River rail tunnel and take advantage of our God-given location. I spend extra money to be on Ridgewood Avenue because it's a great location. You can't get that. We have it, and we haven't been able to take advantage of it. Once we do that, everything will open up. We are 12 miles from the greatest reservoir of capital on the planet, and that's what we need to do to help business.
Thank you. Please. No applause. Okay, let's have a short question. We'll just have a minute for this one, and this time we're going to start with Mr. Rooney.
Okay.
And the question is, do you believe that the local emergency response management personnel should be notified of the passage of oil transport through their towns?
With respect to the bill that was for the legislature, I believe that the bill needed some work. Overall, conceptually, I believe that they do, but the way the bill was presented to the legislature lacked the ability to move the bill in the right direction, so I voted no. That was my position. If it had went back to committee as we suggested, I would have voted yes on the bill. So there was advance notice for all of our emergency responders. My wife's in the room tonight. She is the second lieutenant of the Wyckoff Ambulance Corps. I would want to protect her as I would want to protect each and every resident, every one of our first responders.
Thank you. Mr. Vagianos.
I'm sorry, would you repeat the question?
Do you believe that the emergency response personnel, management personnel, should be notified when the passage of oil transport is going to take place in their community?
Well, of course. You know, that's something that's a dangerous instrumentality. They should just be made aware. It's not a big deal. It's not going to cost $1 to do it. Where's the downside in letting emergency management people know so that they can be at the ready? Fire department, police department, ambulance service.
So, okay, and Mr. Phillips.
Yes, I believe local emergency response teams should be notified. When I was mayor in Wyckoff, I was regularly notified when hazardous materials were coming through the community. Most certainly, our community wanted to know, but it's not always so simple because there were a number of occasions where the mayor and council in our town were notified that perhaps hazardous materials might be coming through at some point in time, perhaps this month. So, you know, you got to dig deep and you've got to get answers and you've got to talk to the relevant agencies and make sure that the data is correct before you launch a response from your emergency response team. But yes, definitely the answer is yes.
Okay, Mr. Dutch.
Yes, every community in the state is charged with having an emergency management plan available, filed, has to be filed with the county office. And in that plan, you need to say what would happen, what would you do in the event there is a disaster. So how do you plan? How do you put an emergency management plan into effect if you don't know what's coming through your community? So you absolutely need to know. There is no reason in the world why the police chief and the emergency management coordinator of every community should not be made aware of potential hazards so that they are prepared to address them if and when they need to.
Would you like Ms. Ordway to go?
Did I omit
Missed me,
you?
but that's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
I am not familiar with the legislation that Kevin Rooney spoke about, so I would like to research that. But I believe too, as my running mates have said, we absolutely need to have an emergency plan and make them aware of what's coming through that is hazardous or dangerous, potentially dangerous.
Thank you for calling.
You're welcome. And I'm going to agree with everyone that, yes, we should notify our emergency management personnel. We need to protect our towns, and we need to protect them as well. It would just make sense if we could tighten it up a little bit, as Mr. DePhillips said, so that we knew when it was actually going to come, any hazardous substances. So absolutely, yes.
Great, thank you. Now, we're going to do a little more complicated question, so we'll go back to 1.5. And we're going to have a question on the environment. And suppose we start with you, Ms. Corrado. And how can New Jersey meet energy needs while protecting the environment? For example, would you support energy conservation, expansion of renewable energy projects, hydraulic fracturing, pipelines, or whatever else you might?
So I think this is an easy one. Absolutely, we have to protect the state we live in, protect our environment, renewable energy sources, whatever we can do. One of the things that was brought up before was the Governor Christie taking the settlement funds from the Exxon lawsuit, and there was a lawsuit with the Passaic River. I'm familiar with it as the municipal attorney. Unfortunately, the town was involved in protracted litigation for over 10 years, and it had to do with dumping in Hackensack into the Passaic River back in the 1970s. There was a settlement in that lawsuit, and instead of the money being used to clean up the Superfund site, the money went back into the general fund. So I think it's critical that when there is Superfund litigation, we make sure that we protect our environments, clean up the sites, and take care of New Jersey. We want it to be green because we all want to stay here, and we want our children to be able to stay here too.
Thank you. Mr. Dutch.
A very long time ago, I served as chairman of Conservation and Natural Resources Committee down in the General Assembly. I served in that position for 2 years. While I was there, I supported farmland preservation. I supported expansion of the Green Acres program and the saving of properties up and down the state. I am somebody who believes that we must always support and encourage sustainable and renewable energy. I believe that wind and solar have no downside, wind and solar power. We should do what we can to enhance it and to support and to encourage it. In terms of environmental history, in the city of Garfield, we do have a Superfund site. I have worked hand in hand with the EPA on the cleanup of that site and will continue to do so. So I have some excellent hands-on experience that I would like to bring to the legislature. Thank you.
Mr. DePhillips.
Yes, we had the same question, virtually the same question at our last debate in Wayne. I think we were pretty much all on the same page.
Right, this is the environment question.
Yes,
right.
Indeed,
Okay.
same question. So I certainly support renewable energy research. Good environmental conservation policy is good economic policy in this state. My position is that health and safety comes first, so we need to address environmental problems as they crop up in our district and around the state, and we need to protect our residents first and foremost. I agree with what Kristen said, and we talked about this at the last debate also, that when environmental settlements happen, speaking as an attorney, I think the settlements belong to the parties that were party to that litigation, and those monies should not go into the general treasury.
That's our state's question on the ballot. And Ms. Ordway.
I have a certificate from Rutgers University in environmental science. So I've been involved, not legislatively, but otherwise with schools and other businesses in terms of environmental cleanup. I am against the pipelines. I am against fracturing. And I believe that the environmental fund should not be used at all to balance the budget, which it has historically been doing. And I also believe in renewables, but I believe we need to make sure that the environment is being protected at the same time.
Thank you. Well, one of my honors in the legislature is I sit on the Environment and Solid Waste Committee, and I've worked over the past 10 months with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. For example, I've introduced and spearheaded legislation just to do that. I've introduced legislation for renewable energy. Paul, if you check my records, you'll see that.
Really?
As I said earlier this year, the joint Senate and Assembly committees heard testimony on the Diamond Alkylate Superfund site in the Passaic River, not in my district. I took that to heart and moved forward with it. And as I said, I've secured and supported legislation by 63 members of the legislature, which will hold the country of Argentina responsible for a $1.4 billion cleanup, allowing New Jerseyans to get the desired result without the impact financially. So I've worked very hard for the environment. I will continue to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Veggiano.
Back in the 80s, before it was really fashionable to be an environmentalist, I was Deputy Attorney General with the Environmental Prosecutions Task Force in Trenton. We prosecuted companies like ExxonMobil. For those of you old enough to remember when hypodermic syringes were washing up on Jersey's beaches, that was an investigation and a prosecution that came out of our office. After that, I became general counsel to a large environmental company in the Trenton area. And, you know, one of the things I learned there is that the government doesn't recycle a single can, does not clean up a single Superfund site, does not operate even one landfill. Private industry does that. So what's the balance? The balance is that private industry will do the benchmarks that are set by government, by the DEP. And that's where the balance comes in. DEP sets the mark, and business has to come in and get the work done. As far as fracking and pipelines and those things, I have a simple rule. Fossil fuels bad, renewables good. It's not complicated. Now, are we ready to go completely to renewables? Of course not yet. But we cannot continue to build the infrastructure of fossil fuels like with pipelines. And we need to move away from things that are dangerous like fracking. For example, I don't know if it was Oklahoma or Kansas has gone from 5 earthquakes a year to 8,000 earthquakes a year. So that's the direction we need to move in.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this time it's your choice. 1 minute. We're going to begin with Mr. Veggiano, who I don't think it's been first so far. Name one priority that you have in the legislature that we haven't covered tonight, whatever topic it might be.
My topic is always going to be building the Hudson River Rail Tunnel. And I alluded to it briefly, but this is something that's just got to get done. We're a commuter state. Let's all wake up and smell the flowers on this. We need to fix this problem. 12 miles, hour and 45 minutes. Just doesn't work. Your sister lives in Brooklyn. She lives in a condo that is 600 square feet that is worth $800,000. Now, if you do the arithmetic on your house, imagine what's going to happen when your house is 30 minutes by rail tunnel from Manhattan, because that's what gives that condo value.
Thank you. Mr. Rooney.
You know, it's worth repeating.
We one issue that we haven't talked about that's important to you when you get to lunch.
What's important to me is taxes and affordability in this state. And fixing the school funding formula is imperative. You know, it's been said many times tonight, but I think it's worth repeating. You know, here in Ridgewood, you receive $2 million in school aid. As I said before, $54 million is going to a town of where Mr. Dutch is the town manager of $54 million. There's $740 million that goes to the city of Patterson. We can't afford this. We need to look at that closely. We need to keep our state affordable, and we need to take a strong, hard look at the affordability and fixed school funding.
Thank you. Ms. Ordway, your priority?
My priority would be to raise the minimum wage. I don't believe that people can live on $8 an hour. I've spent a lot of time working with single moms and others in Patterson who are working 2 and 3 jobs just to feed their families. So I would spend time on doing that.
Thanks. Mr. DeFilippo.
Well, I have 2 since Mr. Rooney took mine.
That's why we're a team.
Mine was to fix the school funding formula, which he mentioned. And just to give you an example, and we've heard a lot of examples about the inequity in school funding around the state. Average home in, let's say, Allendale, New Jersey, $845,000 value of a home. Taxes, let's say the taxes are $14,000 on that home. We have examples of other homes in other cities around the state, like Jersey City, Hoboken. You can zero in on an $845,000 home, and in fact, you can zero in on the mayor of Jersey City's home in Jersey City, which is worth $845,000, and his taxes are $7,000. I think that's unfair. I think that's wrong. That's because the people in our area are funding education that's benefiting other communities. Second issue is the legislation, the proposals that are pending on the other side to make our state a sanctuary state. I'm very much opposed to that, and I will fight against that if I'm in the legislature. Thank you.
Mr. Dutch.
A subject that has not been discussed. Earlier today, I talked about, in my introduction, about serving on a special anti-hazing task force established by the state legislature. There's an article in the October 11, 2017 Time magazine entitled, "College Students Keep Dying Because of Fraternity Hazing. Why is it so hard to stop?" There is a bill in the Assembly, A 3323. It is a bill that seeks to, right now, it's a fourth-degree crime only if you cause serious bodily harm in hazing. This legislation seeks to upgrade it so that mental or emotional hazing becomes a fourth-degree crime. So, there is no companion Senate bill. That is a bill that I would introduce immediately. That's something that has not been discussed tonight, and it's something that is a subject that is so dear to people, such as those mentioned in this article.
So I have two. One is increasing services for our veterans, who are near and dear to my heart. There is a Veterans Court that they recently approved, but it doesn't go far enough. You know, when our soldiers come back and they're suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome and they act out or get in trouble, we need to be compassionate and understanding. And it's very similar to drug court. They have it in other states. It's an extremely successful program, and I think we need to expand that. And then I'm also proud to say that I co-sponsored my first bill to protect our developmentally disabled, our most vulnerable. The bill would require background checks, more thorough background checks for anybody who works with the autistic and the developmentally disabled, and I'm extremely proud of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, time for our closing statements, and we go in reverse order of opening statements, which means Mr. Dutch will go first.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being out. League of Women Voters, thank you for sponsoring this debate. This evening you've heard a lot about us, you've learned a lot about us. I would submit to you that I'm a candidate who has 25 years plus of government experience. I have hands-on experience. I deal with people and their lives each and every day. I would like to take that to the next level. I have served in the Assembly before. I believe that I am uniquely qualified to serve as a senator and to represent all of the people of the 40th District. We are people, this is a team that has, you have a gentleman who is a business owner who comes with a certain perspective. You have a lady who has done tremendous philanthropic and social work, who has worked for many, many causes, and she's been very, very humble about that. And you have me with government experience. So we are a well-rounded team. We're a team that I think offers a lot and can represent this district extremely well, and I ask for your support.
Thank you. Please, you're running late. Applause at the end only, please. Okay. Ms. Corrado.
Thank you. So just a little bit about myself again. I'm a lifelong resident of Passaic County. I was born and raised there. I'm number 2 of 7 children. I have been partners with my father in our law firm for 26 years. 10 of those years I served as the municipal attorney for the town of Totowa. County clerk for the last 8 years. And I think it's important to note that I was a Republican for 5 years, the only Republican in county government, and in the minority for the rest of the term. But while I was down there, I was able to accomplish quite a few things. I opened up the first satellite office for our up-county residents. I expanded our hours and services, and I did this through flex and comp time with no increase to the taxpayers. I gave back $13 million. I figured out how to do it, and I got it done. I want to bring that common sense, I'm going to get it done approach to Trenton. No disrespect to Mr. Dutch, but you've been down there already. We don't need to go backwards. We need to go forward, and that's what I'm here to do. Reducing taxes, making New Jersey affordable again, getting rid of the mandates that are crushing all of us. That's what we stand for. We're independent, we're proud to be Republican, and we're looking forward to representing the 40th District in New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we will go to Mr. Vagianos.
Thank you. Chris, you and Kevin talk about cutting taxes a lot, but the two of you were on the Wyckoff Town Council from 2009 through 2016. That's 7 years, and you served collectively 3 years as mayor. Let's look at your record of cutting property taxes during that time. In each and every year, you raised property taxes. That bears repeating. You raised property taxes every year for 7 years in a row. And that is on a council in which you held not a majority, but a supermajority. By comparison, there were several years here in Ridgewood where tax increases were 0%. Our current council is doing an equivalently great job. So during the same time that you were raising taxes in Wyckoff, ours did not go up a dollar. The truth is, you have no idea how to cut taxes. But if you'd like to learn, please pick up a copy of our plan. It explains in very simple terms exactly how to do it on page 2. In fact, you should take a moment and check out the whole thing, because it's got a lot of good ideas that I think you might like. For example, lowering college tuition costs, which we talked about earlier. That would be found on page 4. Expanding our tax base to increase state revenues, also on page 2. Addressing the flooding issues that have plagued our communities for decades can be found on page 6. Building the the Hudson River Rail Tunnel, also on page 6. Upgrading our downtown shopping areas, which this council is working on every single day, can be found on page 4. Upgrading our support services for veterans and citizens with special needs can be found on page 5. The list goes on and on and on. I suggest you get a copy.
Thank you. Mr. Rooney.
Sure. Well, I think I'm glad you're not Pinocchio, because your nose would grow there. Because when we speak about truth, it's important to identify what you mean by taxes. When school taxes are 72% of the municipal bill in Wyckoff, and in here in Ridgewood, close to the same. It's also important to speak the truth. Both our opponents on the Assembly side pledged not to accept PAC contributions. And in fact, their latest ELEC report says they accepted $2,500 from the New Millennium PAC in Washington, D.C., and the Silk PAC in Caldwell. So again, we need honesty and transparency, Paul, in politicians who practice what they preach. So back to the closing statement. As your assemblyman, I will work hard to represent Ridgewood and the rest of the district. One of my top concerns is the opiate epidemic sweeping across our nation and this state. The Bergen County prosecutor just a few months ago said overdoses of heroin and opiate prescriptions here in this county will hit an all-time high this year. I can tell you, as I said earlier, my wife is a volunteer EMT in the Wyckoff Ambulance Corps, and she can speak firsthand to the opiate depth of the problem that strikes all ages, not just the young, but the old. No income brackets are identified, it's everyone. The first step is awareness to the problem. The second is to get help to the people who have addiction problem. I've introduced legislation supported by the Attorney General that closes loopholes in the laws and strengthens our ability to fight addiction. Addressing the crushing property burdens is a major, major concern to me. As I said, Ridgewood schools receive $2.19 million per year in education compared to $400 million in Patterson, $741 million in Newark, and I'm committed to supporting fair school funding formula, which would save here in Ridgewood $4,200 in property taxes on average. We also need to look at unfunded mandates that are crippling our municipalities. We need to go back. As I said, fair share housing requirements in Ridgewood alone are 900 units. 3,600 units would be built by builders. We can't afford more. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Rooney. Ms. Ordway.
I want to say that if you send me to Trenton, I will be one of the few CPA MBAs in Trenton. There are a lot of attorneys. I also want to clarify some things. Our opponents keep talking about cutting taxes. Kim Guadagno, as I mentioned earlier, wants a $3,000 tax decrease off the bat. If the Republican tax plan goes through, the average household will lose $4,400 in tax deductions. I also want to clarify that although the Democrats have more senators and assembly representatives in Trenton, we do not have a veto-proof majority. So Christie has more veto power than any other governor in any other state. He's vetoed more bills in his 8 years than all the governors combined in 25 years. So if we are elected, our team, and Kim Guadagno becomes our governor, we may have a veto-proof majority and we can hold her to the fire.
And Mr. Phillips.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the League for a robust exchange of ideas among the candidates tonight, and it was robust. So, my vision for New Jersey focuses on making the state more affordable so families and businesses can stay here in New Jersey instead of fleeing to places like the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida. It also focuses on forcing Trenton to live within its means, just like families in District 40 do every single day. Our opponents, however, are lockstep with Phil Murphy and Sheila Oliver, and their vision for the state is out of touch with the residents of District 40. They want increased taxes. They want New Jersey to become a sanctuary state. They want to bring single-payer Obamacare to New Jersey. They're on record in favor of single-payer. And they very cynically want to decriminalize marijuana, and you ask why. It's just an excuse to tax another new industry and raise more money for future government programs that the state can ill afford to have. Have you ever seen politicians more eager to raise taxes than Phil Murphy and Sheila Oliver? As I said earlier, they minimally want to raise $9 billion in new taxes on all of you on a state budget that is already $34 billion, which sounds like a lot to me. The end result is that more New Jersey families, more New Jersey businesses are going to flee this state. Remember when Governor Florio tried to raise $2.8 billion in taxes on the state in the early 1990s? What happened to Governor Florio? He got run out of office. The Murphy-Oliver plan, which our opponents are supporting, is the Florio plan on steroids. As for our three opponents, they cannot run away from Murphy and Oliver. They're running with them on the ballot. They're working to get them elected, and they very much are on record in support of the agenda that Murphy and Oliver want to enact into law in New Jersey. In closing, my wife Patty and I are teaching our 4 children the value of money and what it means to responsibly budget. I will bring that same responsible budgeting philosophy to the legislature. Before I finish, I just want to correct 2 things. Well, I'm at stop, so thank you. Thank you.
Just a reminder, you all know the date of the election, November 7th. And in addition to your legislature candidates, probably your local candidates and the gubernatorial candidate, there will be 2 questions on state issues on the ballot. And we have some literature about those. One is a bond issue for construction for libraries, and the other is to assure that funds such as the Exxon case, which resulted in revenue to the state, that revenue should go to environmental purposes to clean up what was the subject of the suit. So those are the 2 questions that you will be asked to vote on, as well as the candidates. Now, let's have a big round of applause for all 6.
Thank you. And can we also have a round of applause for our moderator and the League of Women Voters?